Hello, hello, bonnet heads. Hi, Allison and Dean.
Hey.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's cold out here.
How's the weather?
It is.
The weather is
It
cold.
is cold
It
out
is
here.
freaky cold for California. It is cold. It was the 30s at night.
No, it really is. But I'm going to tell you, it's a little warmer at our house this year than it was a couple of years ago because you recommended us a heating and air conditioning contractor that transformed our lives.
Yes, and he did our place.
Well, he did your. That's why we hired him.
This morning when it was freezing and I woke up and I was warm, I went, yes.
Yes, it was great.
Well, this New Yorker has very little sympathy for the Californians.
And nor should you. Nor should
As
you.
you see me sitting here, and when I'm in a cable knit turtleneck sweater, the struggle is real over here.
Oh, yeah, but over here, it's 40 degrees. I'm going to die of exposure.
I know, and that's what it feels. And no, we're so soft here. It's just unbelievable what wusses we are. But it's also a great excuse to put on a heavy sweater and a cap and a whole thing. It's like makes you feel like it's winter.
For you, it's like it's like a novelty. The struggle is real.
Okay, it was like 37 degrees the other day. It was like 37 degrees in Los Angeles the other day. That's
that is
freakish.
That
does not happen.
Angry. Earth is very angry at us, you guys.
Brr.
I just wonder how the Ingalls survived, doing hay twists to keep warm and a little.
They almost froze. You were king of the long winter of reading that. They almost froze to death. Is what they did. They had the hay and the little chips. They almost froze to death.
I could barely get through you reading that online during the pandemic, Dean, because it was so brutal. I was like, I can't.
A lot of people feel like Long Winter was her best written book because the jeopardy was so high in the book.
Well, I say all the time, I just would not have survived the prairie because I get sick way too often, and there was no penicillin, people. So
I would not have made it.
Have survived the long winter. No. But speaking of, long winters and Little House on the Prairie, we are going to talk more about Laura Ingalls, of course, and the Little House origin story with our guest today. From the studios of UBN Go in Burbank, California, Visit SeeMeValley.com presents a special event podcast. This is Little House 50 for 50. I just want to snuggle up on my couch with a fuzzy blanket after that music.
It's very soothing, isn't it?
Yes. Where's my fireplace?
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Okay, well, during these early episodes, as I said last week as well, we are going to explore the early origins of Little House. Mm-hmm. And last time, you guys, we started with the question, what did we all know about Little House before the series?
Yeah, Zippo.
Nothing.
I also knew nothing. All I know is that one day Olga with one short leg and one long leg was on my television, and I was hooked.
Well, I thought it was the bare-chested Michael Landon that hooked you.
That eventually,
Okay.
He built the shoe for her, so I was hooked on him then anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are going to start with the question, what did America know about Little House when the series started?
Yeah.
Do you guys know anything?
Well, it's sort of regional. I mean, more than us.
But I mean, I think it's sort of huge because these books started getting published in 1932, 1933. There's 40 years of reading of these books that's out there before
and they would have these weird
Before the
resurgence, like the
series even came
50s.
out.
There was a big explosion. It was like there was the 30s and the 50s. So there was that generation of women who fell in love with Little Joe on Bonanza, and they had all read the Little House books when they were 9, and then they're teenagers, and then it was like, oh look, and now they're having children. Oh, well, Little House on the Prairie, boom. But yeah, there was a whole generation of women that were like right in that age group where Little House was a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose in the 50s, too, with sort of the roles of men and women during that time and, before women's lib and all that nice stuff, it sort of played into that aspect of it. However, I think later on, during the women's lib movement, it also played into that because those prairie women were no joke.
They were tough.
No joke.
Well, when I did a Doc, I had an expert from the University of Kansas who talked about Little House on the Prairie and second wave feminism and what a contrast that was when you have, the women in long dresses and corseted and all of that. And then, but in this world, in the way Michael wrote it, women had something to say.
Yeah, they had agency.
Yeah, about what was going on, and yet you also have this sort of this packaging of women that's going on at that time. So it's sort of a fascinating contrast. I think what it speaks to, women settled America. I mean, men went out with their guns and and advanced along. But there are no towns, there are no cities, there are no communities without women and children. Because men aren't going to stay somewhere. They're going to keep going, looking for the next thing, looking for the next woman, looking for whatever it is. But women want that stability, and so women make community happen.
Don't forget Laura Ingalls Wilder said, "I'm not saying obey in the marriage ceremony." And Almanza was like, "Oh, it's okay. I already talked to the pastor. We're not doing obey."
Yeah, and he was okay with that.
Absolutely, 100%. So that's in the books. In the 30s, people were still saying obey. And then I'd just like to say, when they had the episode where they had the sort of the ERA piece where women could own property, Percival was the first to sign. I just want to.
He sure was. He's a good Jewish boy, and also let's face it, Harriet Olsen was the only one in a corset on that prairie. But anyway. We're going to talk more about all of this, maybe even corsets on Harriet Olsen, with today's guest, who, surprise, surprise, is also our guest last week. But he was so darn good, and I kept talking about Chesty Charles that we didn't get enough to talk with our wonderful, wonderful guest. Here is Chris Chaika.
Yay! Yay, Chris again. Yay, thank heavens. Thank heavens you're back. God.
Welcome back, Chris. It is so good to see you.
Oh no, we gotta wait. Gotta wait for the love theme to play out.
The David Rose theme.
The David Rose love theme. That's the Lauren Almanzo theme there. So, all right, here we go. Welcome, Chris.
All right, Chris.
Good to see you guys. Glad to be back.
Thank heavens you'll return.
Thank you so much for coming back. There's still applause. It's a lot of applause for you, which is well deserved.
Thank you for the studio audience.
As soon as we stopped last week, we all went, no, we have to have him back for a part 2. This is ridiculous. So hi, welcome. So glad you came back.
So glad to be here.
I've noticed that the two of you, so we talk on the phone and we talk online about this, and Pamela, when we were talking, one day you said that you and Chris meeting for dinner and you've become fast friends. How did you guys meet? How did you get to know each other?
It's all Miss Allison Arngrim's fault.
Oh, of course.
I was aware of Living on a Prairie, Pamela's series, and watched all of the episodes of it. And then last year or 2 years ago,
I think it was
when
2 years
Allison was
now.
performing her show in New York, I saw Pamela there and just marched right up to her and introduced myself.
Yeah.
And then
No, this is how the story.
Here we go. Here we go. So
we're at Allison's show. It's after she's signing her book, she's signing her merch, and I was sort of sitting there waiting for her because we were going to eat afterwards. And all of a sudden, I hear a voice say, "Pamela," and I look up, and it's this man who I do not know in front of me. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I'm a big fan of your show," which was, if anyone ever says that to me, I'm just absolutely floored and astonished. And I said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And then you said, "And my husband here, he also loves your show, and he's never seen Little House on the Prairie." And I went, that's my demographic. Yeah, bullseye. And then I said, like a dope, "What do you do?" She replied, "Oh."
Well, how could you know? You'd never met him before.
Right.
You
Well,
shouldn't feel too horrible about
I didn't know
that.
his name. No, but the answer was, "Oh, I produced the Laura Ingalls Wilder American Masters episode on PBS."
How great.
And then I dropped to the floor dead because, first of all, I'm a PBS nerd. Second of all, if you work for PBS, you're the coolest.
Yeah.
And third of all, hello, the Laura Ingalls Wilder episode was amazing. So then I kidnapped him and we all had dinner together.
And we did.
we all had dinner together.
And it was awesome.
And then it's history.
Yes.
We're in regular communication.
Yes,
Yeah,
we are.
I mean, did you just have dinner last night together?
We were
No.
going.
Oh,
We were
was
going
it
to.
too cold in New York
But-
to meet for dinner?
Well, my daughter was sick and something else came up. And so next week, don't worry, Dean.
Oh, yeah. No,
Thursday.
I'm
It's
just
all
curious.
happening.
Just curious. Yeah.
It's all happening. Dinner is happening. Well, Chris is encyclopedically knowledgeable about all things Little House. He's quite impressive. The series, as well as the books, as we established last week, he is bi. He likes both the books and the series.
It's funny.
So, Chris, Laura's books have been on the shelves for 40 years by the time the series appeared on NBC, just like how Dean said before. So, do you think it was well known in 1974? What was the place in American culture for Little House?
I mean, as you said, the books were around for 40 years leading up to the debut of the series, but they were pretty well known by the time the series came out. First of all, back in the 30s and early 40s, when the Little House books were coming out, they sold very well. They weren't Harry Potter style bestsellers, but they were popular books. So they already had, by the end of the 1940s, she was a very well-known children's author. So you have librarians across the country that are recognizing her work. I mean, the books were award-winning. Several of the books were Newbery honor books. And the books were also making their way into schools, whether it was teachers who were reading the complete books to their kids, or Ms. Rose Wilder Lane, who we'll talk about later,
Shade.
set up a deal to get excerpts from the books in reading textbooks. So that is where kind of Laura's brand and recognition explodes, because literally hundreds of millions of kids over 40 years are encountering the Little House books in their reading textbooks.
Yeah, right.
So
she was smart. She was ahead of her time.
Rose was thinking on all of the angles and figuring out how to get these books as much exposure as she possibly could. So by the time the series came around, there were roughly 2 generations-ish. The original readers and then the original readers' children were at a place where they could be reading the books. So she was a well-known children's author, and the books were well-known by the time the series happened.
Yeah.
And do you think the books were well known all across the country, or do you think it was specified in the Midwest?
I think they were, I grew up in Western New York State. They were part of my school curriculum. And, I think a lot of textbooks, especially the textbook angle, they made their way into a lot of classrooms. I do think they were more popular in certain areas of the country.
Sure.
And to this day, they're more popular in certain areas of the country just because of their proximity to the historical locations.
No, my friends read them. I'm the weirdo that I just didn't happen to read them. I knew people who read them. Later on, my friends were like, "What do you mean you didn't read them? What's wrong with you?"
Well, and it's interesting is that as popular as these are, as well read as they are, when Ed Friendly initially went out and pitched the series, all the networks passed.
Oh, yeah, they did not get it.
They
were
all said,
like,
this is just too old-fashioned. Of course, this is also coming at the time in the early 70s when the networks are all transitioning away from shoot-'em-up westerns where with gunplay and all that, and they saw this as a softer version of that, and said, "Well, we're getting away from that. We're trying to get away from all of this." It really wasn't until Michael Landon walked in the door with that friendly that it
they
changed
literally
it.
called it the deruralization of TV. They were going to the TNA shows, the cop shows, etc. My father who managed me actually mentioned when it did, and he goes, "Oh yeah, Ed Friendly. He's been shopping those books around for years. Did he get someone to take them?"
Well, I suppose not just that they were trying to get away from sort of Western style shows, but I also suppose that they might have thought it was an hour of twisting hay.
Yeah, right.
Which,
Right.
It's sort of, where's the edge in that, I suppose. But
Well,
yeah,
it's sort of
that's
edgy,
genius of Michael
twisting
Landon.
hay, but yeah, no, exactly. But Michael had
It
such
really
a
hurt your fingers.
talk about getting calloused, bloody
Have you
fingers
done it?
if you're.
Have you done it?
Yeah, I have
You
done
did
it. It did it. Yeah, and you wouldn't want to do it for very long, and yet here these, they were surviving on this.
Yikes.
For a
Better
period
twist
of
the hay
time.
if you don't want to freeze to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Chris,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, who was Laura, do you think, as a creative person?
Well, I think you have to kind of begin that question with who was Laura. And I think there are multiple layers to Laura Ingalls Wilder as she exists. There's I always sort of think about it as like 4. Number one, there's Laura Ingalls Wilder, the woman who lived from 1867 to 1957. Newsflash to anyone who may be listening to this podcast, she was a real person. There are sometimes people who are unaware of this fact.
Really?
She was a real person. She was a real person.
This stuff
Second thing.
happened.
The second Laura is the book Laura. And that is a fictional character that Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote in the books based on her own life. Hewing very, very closely to who she was, but nonetheless a fictional character based on herself. The third Laura, which this group of folks is very well versed in, is the Melissa Gilbert Laura, who had all sorts of adventures and all sorts of things happening to her on the series.
Yes.
And then the fourth Laura is kind of this blend of all of the 3 previous Lauras. It's the book Laura, the TV Laura. It's whatever people happen to understand. It's their association of Laura with everything from the 19th century. You see a patchwork quilt and they're like, oh, it's Little House on the Prairie. So, there's these different layers to who Laura was and who people think Laura is. Laura as an artist, the first several decades of her life, she always had an artist's heart, but she was working really, really hard, kind of keeping body and soul together. I think
I'm sorry, Chris, are you talking about Laura as a little girl or Laura as the adult who's just trying to survive now? She's married, she's having...
I mean, she was working to survive
they all were.
I would say the first 55-ish years.
To work in a hotel at, 9 or something. I mean, she was, and then even as a young woman. But it's like when you talk about the 4 Laura's, like quantum physics of Laura. It's everywhere, all the time, all at once, all the time.
Right.
Laura Ingalls. It's the Laura multiverse.
As she was growing up, I think there was a love of music in that household, in the real Laura's household. Sure. There was a love of literature. These were not people who had an extensive library of books, but they were reading all the time. So I think, and definitely Charles Ingalls was a poet. He did a little bit of writing himself. He was obviously a musician. I think she grew up with an appreciation for the arts and for literature. I don't think she got to dedicate herself to it until much, much later in her life because she was working so hard. But I think she, from very early on, enjoyed writing and knew she had a certain knack for it.
I was going to ask that, whether she actually knew she could even write.
She, through her entire life, she kept school essays that she had written. She kept scraps of poetry that she had written. And she included in the Little House books, there are a few instances where it talks about Laura's writing and her having an interest in writing. So I think that's something that started very early. But again, it wasn't until much later in her life, and actually at the urging of her daughter, who by that point was a successful writer, her daughter was like, you know what, you could make some money with this. Why don't you dip your toes into the world of writing professionally to kind of supplement the income that you're getting from the farm?
Well, wasn't she also, well before the book, she was writing for the paper.
Right.
She was in Missouri. It was the 1920s, and she was cranking out articles for that.
Right.
And it was kind of a human interest column, but it was funny stuff. She was very good.
Yeah. She was writing essays about rural life. She was writing about managing a household for a Missouri farm newspaper, decades before she sat down to write the Little House books. So she was kind of refining her skills as a writer in her life long before she sat down and wrote the books.
And just, let's just give mad props to, someone whose sort of career really started in their 50s, who gained such acclaim and honor. And, it started then for her. It was
really a trailblazer in that sense for women, to...
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody to be able to begin something like that. But for a woman of her age in that time in America to be able to do what she did is pretty extraordinary.
First book published when she was 65.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just extraordinary. I love that so much.
Something-
I want to hear more about women who really start at 65.
Yeah, but then it's
you
like we
know?
all have no excuse. It just makes us all go, I have no
exactly.
excuse.
Right, well,
Nobody
that's
has
the
excuses.
blessing and the curse
She's a
of it, isn't
Missouri
it, right?
farm woman at 65 kicked all of our butts here.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Chris, what impact do you think she actually had on the series?
The television series?
Yeah.
I think, there, as we talked about last time, there are folks who are so devoted to the books and love the books so much, they get very upset that the series deviated from the books.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, I think when you boil down both the books and the television series, at heart, they are very similar and compatible with each other.
Thank you. I think.
I
They're
totally
talking
agree with
about
Thank you,
the
yes.
importance of family. They're talking about relationships between siblings. They're talking about, you don't need money to have a happy life.
Right.
They're talking about people working together. So kind of the essence of both the Little House books and Little House on the Prairie, the TV show, very, very, very similar. Wildly different as far as plot and characters, but at core, I think Michael Landon and the producers and writers always had the Little House books as sort of a guiding philosophical North Star. So even if they didn't shoot the books word for word, kind of the spirit of the books was contained in the TV show.
Chris,
Yeah, which is why I think it's lasted this long.
Amen. Amen.
I love. Let's have some applause for.
We do a round of applause. But
Chris
yes,
Pike on
yes,
that.
yes.
I mean,
Thank you.
I think you hit that so on the nail on the head on that. I always feel like when I read the books, it's about what people did. When I watch the television series, it's about what people felt. And when you connect doing and feeling together, you're getting a total life. Yes, it wasn't the books in its total storytelling, but the tone, the feeling was,
And the
I think,
philosophy.
right in sync. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
and paw shirtless with the broken rib. Okay, I had to say it. I had to put it in at least one time.
It was more emotional because one of the things that I, having read up on, in the 1800s, you weren't really supposed to be spilling your emotions around in public. People did not carry on and say, I really need to tell you how I feel. This is in 1800s, you were like, I can't, I don't have time for that. I have to go grind some wheat in the coffee maker and twist some hay so I don't die. So they're a little busy. But so being emotional about stuff, and even in the books, you read things about Laura talking about she was too big to cry, and she's like 4.
She was 8.
Yeah, it's like, and the whole family, terrible things happen. It's like we must be brave. We must be brave. Yes, we feel bad. Nobody breaks down and cries. That's like the end of the world. Somebody doing that. Whereas on the show, this was sort of like how the Ingalls, if they'd been allowed to express their emotions in the 1870s, what they would have said, because they were feeling all these things. But in the 1870s, they weren't allowed to say that.
Right. No, it's a
And
good
in-
point. It's a good point.
In particular, men. I mean, I
forget it.
still have never seen a show before where not just one man in a scene with his daughter or his wife is emotional, but 2 grown-ass men are crying.
So you're
to
talking
each
about
other.
Merlin Olsen and Michael
I
and the.
mean,
Mr.
come
Edwards
on.
wept.
I've
Mr.
never
Edwards.
seen that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right,
no.
here
Yeah,
we go.
exactly.
There will be more with Chris Chaika on the Little House 50 for 50 podcast, presented by Visit Simi Valley. After this.
Simi Valley, California invites you to see the place where it all began this March at the Little House on the Prairie 50th anniversary. Discover our stories from presidents to pioneers, visit iconic locations like the Reagan Library, and more. Make your own memories at visitsimivalley.com.
That was lovely.
That was Dean. I could just listen to that all day long.
All right. That was so great.
Since we're talking about it, please tell us about Simi Valley, will you, Allison and
Epic.
Dean?
epic. I mean, okay, there's all these fabulous. It's the 50th anniversary. So anybody who's got a Little House on the Prairie site has a site that's like Little House on the Prairie. They're having cast members in, and we're having all kinds of hootenannies and shindigs all over the country. But we filmed the show. We filmed the show in Simi Valley. That's the ranch where I fainted, where we all ran around in the hot sun and in the clothes. This is the place. And we've actually got an event there, and there's recreations of sets, recreations of the facades, where you can stand in front of the little house, and there's going to be a bus that's going to take people up there, and then there's going to be a room, and all of us from the show are going to be there, and memorabilia and stuff from the show original. It's insane.
I mean, listen, I know it's going to be special for you guys because you have memories there,
Sure,
but I will speak on behalf of the fans.
Yes.
Who I used to dream about being on the Walnut Grove. I used to dream about it, about walking down the path in the the middle of the town, and so this is the path.
They're
that's
mowing
sort of
it as we speak, are they?
They're mowing the path.
Didn't you
The fact
do
that
it?
we can go there is amazing.
Allison, back in 2019, before the pandemic began, you were on the ranch one day, right? And something happened.
This was the kooky thing. It was you guys, a bunch of people from the show. I know Melissa, I know Hersha was there. A bunch of people did like a Good Morning America or one of them things.
we did
and
that,
they were
right.
on set, and I was leaving for France. I wasn't going to make it. So I made thing where I went out to the ranch and pranced around and went, and look, and here's the this and here's the that. And so suddenly it was like, hi, surprise, I'm on the show.
What? Oh, you
was
just
that
showed
one.
up for that? Oh, see, no, and that wasn't what I was thinking about.
There was
but
the other one.
That's a great story.
No, there was the one we did in 2000 and something, early, we did, it was the 40th.
See, and what I was thinking about is the story
Me and
that
Shar.
you and maybe you weren't there, but I feel like Rachel was there. You were there, where a family was being given a very quiet tour.
Yes, we were walking around because we were talking about this event. It was the beginning of plotting this event. We've been planning this event for years.
Since 2019.
Oh, really?
So it was
have you
Rachel
really?
and Danny
wow.
and the gang from the ranch and me and a bunch of work club. We're going, well, I'll put that over there. And oh, yes, we can do this. And we need to mow this. And a family who were totally unrelated to what we were doing had been to like various prairie events. They were coming to look, and they were going to hope to like see where the buildings were for a few minutes, be allowed into the ranch. And then we're all like standing there. Like
You still live there?
multiple people from the show are just standing there in the dirt by a car. Hi, how you doing? And
That is
they lost their
wild.
tiny little minds.
Yeah,
and they
and the
posed for pictures.
16-year-old
Yeah.
girl just like burst into
She
tears.
was hysterical because
Yeah.
what were the odds? This was, and I've taken many people up there for fun who are like in tennis. Said, hey, can we come up there? And yes, sure. I've taken just a handful up. I had people just go nuts. I had people like pick up a rock and start crying.
Yeah.
There are people very attached with like, this is it. This is the place. This is the place I watched every night for all those years. And
Yeah.
it does.
I
It
will
has quite the
also
effect.
say that as a fan, it is a particular kind of bizarre seeing you guys in person in real life because you associate you with
Of course.
the 1800s.
Of course.
And in a
course.
place very far away.
They're part of the quantum universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole
exactly.
multiverse thing. So seeing you in person for the first time is just, and I mean, I've only seen a few of you in person for the first time, obviously, but
Sure.
yeah, it's wild. It's a real mind bend.
Well, when you were introducing Living on a Prairie, and you did all these interviews with all of us, and that it was cool for us to get together under that circumstance. But I mean, I can just imagine, sort of fun for you when you're as obsessed with this as you are to see all these people. Now, admittedly, not exactly as they were, 35, 40 years ago, but they're all there. They're all present. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was exhilarating and amazing and vomit-inducing. I think before I interviewed Karen in particular, before I interviewed her,
scared.
I was
Ma.
so scared. I was so nervous that I thought I was going to be sick. And of course, she's wonderful.
Was
to
it
make my life
was it weird when we
easy.
did the show and I played your therapist?
Yes. Well, that's a whole other story.
Bend your head
itself.
right there.
Sitting
That'll put you-
across from Allison doing a scene. We'll tell that story later.
we'll tell that story later.
When
So-
they're in different
Made her cry.
episodes,
Well,
we
if
don't
people want to
get
know
into
more
person
about
stuff.
if they want to know more about our event,
Send-
they can
send
go
them
to
to the thing.
littlehousefestival.com and check it
Yes.
out. And there,
Please do.
you'll see stories about what we're doing, and there are links for tickets and all of that. It is pretty cool. There's no question.
Maybe you guys need branded Kleenex and barf bags.
It's
for
actually
people
the
who get
branded
emotionally
Kleenex is
overwhelmed.
coming.
Are we doing
gosh.
Kleenex?
We are
Because
doing branded
people
Kleenex.
really do cry a lot at
Yes,
these things.
we are
do
doing
need
branded
We get
Kleenex.
a lot
It's
of
going to be
cry.
in the VIP
I will
bags.
investigate that in our merch store
Okay,
right
cool.
away.
We need
That needs to happen.
lots of Kleenex.
Yeah.
So,
The Albert Ingalls Memorial Barf Bag.
yeah. Oh my God!
true.
Stop giving me ideas, Chris. The merch store is going to go bananas.
But see, Chris has all the history and all the books, but clearly knows the show well enough to invoke the Albert Ingalls
Does,
vomiting
and that's why I love
sequence.
hanging out with him and talking
I
about
think
it.
the only
It's a
person who
cool
ever
thing.
barfed on screen in Little House.
This is true, or in how many other shows ever?
Forever?
Seriously.
Never. Yeah, I think so.
Maybe a Meredith Baxter Burney bulimia, Monday night
Maybe
special.
No, on Little
some
House,
new show, and
Oh,
some
I know, but I mean in general.
But on TV, maybe in the last 10 years,
in
somebody's
general.
barfed on camera.
Yeah, I
but
mean,
back then,
yeah.
that was unheard of.
I'm going
Unheard
to
of.
stick with Meredith Baxter Burney. That's my story, and I'm going to stick with.
Not a cool thing to have to play if you're the actor in that situation, blowing mushroom soup out of your mouth as you're. I mean, it's just not fun. Not fun.
And he also nailed it. He was
Well, he
nailing it.
nailed everything. Matt nailed everything. He was
So-
awesome.
Dean and Allison, I'm curious to know. The older I get, the faster time goes, and I don't like it. I just don't like it at all. So knowing that it's 50 years now, how does that actually make you feel?
Old.
Your thoughts about it?
I'm having my birthday in
Yeah.
this date. I have 10 days left. I have 10 days.
10 days left
Of
of,
the being
what?
this age.
Of this age.
Of this
Whatever
age.
this
This
age
age.
is that we're not talking about.
I would be
No.
62 years old
Will you
on
really?
January 18th. I would
Yeah,
be
there you
62 years
go.
old. Or if I was in France,
Well,
I'd be retired by now.
For anybody who is in Allison's presence, you wouldn't know it looking at Allison's skin. Allison is beautiful, beautiful skin. You must be slathering cold cream on it.
I am actually. I tell people no, moisturize constantly. Moisturize before you go to bed. We get up in the morning, moisturize. Just put something, anything on your face. It really does. So, but yeah, it's it's unbelievable. If anyone had told us that 50 years later we'd be having these conversations, absolutely impossible, utterly impossible. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, "Did you say 15?" I said, "No, 50." And they're like,
Oh, wow.
wow. Yeah, it's
Wow,
just
wow,
alarming.
wow.
No, it freaks me out. Yeah.
It's the
Dean,
great.
how does it make you
well, I
feel?
just think it's the great blessing of I can't say this enough. This program being involved in something that is beloved as it is just the great blessing of my life. There's nothing else to compare with it in the sort of the totality of its impact on my life in so many different ways, including, I mean, amazingly, bizarrely, and it's not unusual that actors meet in situations, but Catherine and I weren't working together when we met on the set of Little House. Catherine was coming to audition to play the female lead in Michael Landon's show for Merlin Olsen called Father Murphy. Catherine was there to audition for that female lead, which she ended up getting. But we just, we sort of saw each other. She was married at the time. I was sort of doing something else, but that's where it started. And, 15 years later is when we, actually connected to each other. But it all started on the set of
What a
Little House,
story.
meeting each other there and not even really speaking much to each other, just taking each other in, taking the measure of each other, nice smile, all of that. It was really nice. I mean, so I credit sort of the goodness of my personal life to Little House as well.
Rachel Greenbush, one half of Baby Carrie.
Yeah.
Her husband, the adorable Danny Sanchez, who he lived in Simi, and he and his brothers would hang out on the set. And he
Oh my
was just
God,
it.
can you
and
even
she
imagine?
was, obviously they were both really, really young, but she was like a really little kid. So he was like, oh yeah, he was like hanging out, talking to me, Melissa, and like hanging out with the kids sometimes. And then they met up years later, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember you used to hang out in the set. Oh yeah, you were. Yeah. And then they hit it off, and here we all are. They're married and gorgeous.
I had no idea.
He met her. That's why they got married in
I
Simi
saw
Valley
pictures, yes.
because that's where they met when
That's
they were
correct.
children.
That's correct.
Wait, so hold up. Wait, let's back this train up a second. So
And Chris
if
is
you were
going,
a
what?
kid
I'm sorry.
living in Simi Valley, you could just hang out with you guys on the set.
It was a different time, as they say.
It was a
You could
simpler
get
time.
away. You
This is
could
the most insane
do
thing
that.
I've ever heard.
Yes.
Wow.
There were people who were local who knew people like, oh, here's my friend they're visiting, who were just there.
Wow. Okay, mind blown. Okay, all right. So back to Chris. Here we go, Chris.
All right.
All right, here's another question for you. So, do the Little House books and the Little House series still work? What do you think?
Well, the series, absolutely. I mean, the series, one of the things that I think is great is every new platform that comes along, Little House is there. And I have a closet upstairs that can attest to the VHS tapes that came one at a time.
Seriously, you've got all that.
You have them all.
The Blu-rays,
DVD, the
the
Blu-ray,
DVDs,
everything.
and then it's on Amazon, it's on Freebie. So the series, the television series, I think is fine. It has a huge audience to this day. When we were making the documentary, we went to a lot of the Little House home sites, and we talked to a lot of people, and in particular, a lot of kids. And the primary connection that a lot of children have today is with the TV series and not with the books.
Right.
So I think the TV show, it's also that multi-generational mothers and fathers sharing it with their children, or grandparents sharing it with their grandchildren. The audience just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And there's a new crop of audience, every 10 to 15 years. So I think the television series firmly in our cultural universe. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
So do you then think the books complement the series, or is the books the books now sort of an afterthought?
I think that there is nothing else in television history that has had, and no other books have had a 50-year-long commercial on all over the planet. I mean, I think the series has been promoting the books in a way since it began on the air. At the beginning of every episode, it says, based upon the series of books by Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Right.
I would suggest that it should say vaguely suggested by the books by Laura Ingalls Wilder. But, there is definitely, people are coming to the series because of the books, and people are going to the books because of the series.
Yeah.
There are museums in 7 states dedicated to Laura Ingalls Wilder and
We've
Little
been to
House.
almost all of them. I think.
I don't think there is any way that could be happening in the year 2023 were it not for people being aware of Laura from the TV show.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge relationship between the books and the series complementing each other.
Yeah.
So I'll say something very embarrassing, especially because it's in front of Dean. But when I was a kid, I decided to check out Little House books, especially the Golden Boy one, because
You mean Farmer Boy one?
Why did I say
Golden Boy is
I know
is
that.
something else. It's Clifford Odets. Yeah.
That's what I call you after the show. Anyway, yes, Farmer Boy, because my favorite. See, I love making Dean blush. This is
Oh, my
on.
God.
Yes, does he still blush after 50 years? Yes, he does. Okay.
Game on.
Okay, no, keep going with your story, Pat.
But no, okay, so for the Farmer Boy, you went to read
The first time I checked out the book, and it was that book in particular because my favorite episodes were, the Sweet 16 and sort of when the romance part of it was coming into the TV series. And I started reading the book and I was like, where's the ice bath? Where none of this is
No, he's 7.
none of this is
Yeah,
in
right.
the book.
Right. He's 9 in the case
So
of
in my immaturity, that's where the books lost me. I was like, there is no ice bath that Almanzo is in right now.
When does she beat up the
I know.
showgirl?
Don't you guys?
Yeah, right.
don't
Where's the showgirl?
Where's
right.
the saloon broad?
Yeah.
That's that out.
Yeah.
No?
So
Yeah.
but still, it led me to the books.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
I think
Absolutely,
that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, and this is, I have a question now for all of you.
oh, okay.
Okay. Do you think Laura would have liked the series?
Oh, you're talking about the real Laura.
Ms. Ingalls,
Yeah,
Wilder,
real Laura.
multiverse.
Go ahead.
The real Laura Ingalls Wilder.
I can jump in.
Go
and
for
I'm
it.
pretty
Please do.
confident.
I think-
I'm confident in the answer to this.
Oh God. Okay.
Would not have liked it.
I concur.
However,
no,
I will qualify
she's not.
that. She did not like, from what the historical record shows, she did not like most filmed entertainment.
Oh wow.
Correct.
There were movies
So
for
true.
the last 57-ish years of her life.
Sure.
There was television for almost the last decade of her life. She wrote a lot of letters. She wrote, there's a lot of written record left behind that Laura came up with. And there are very few references. You don't see her writing a letter or telling someone, I went and saw Gone with the Wind. There's very little where she's mentioning television or movies.
Sure.
She did go with Rose once, and there's a letter. She went and saw a Charlie Chaplin movie. Hated it. Hated the movie.
Said he was the most unfunny person
Really?
she'd
Didn't think he
ever
was funny
seen.
at
Thought
all.
he sucked. She hated Charlie
There
Chaplin.
was,
Hated
and this
him
is an
violently.
interesting. They did an early television adaptation of The Long Winter while Laura was still alive.
Yes.
Laura and Almanzo did not have a television set. So Laura went to a friend of hers in Mansfield and watched this half-hour-long show, actually produced by the PBS station in St. Louis.
Represent.
Strikes again.
The record is that she did not think very highly of it.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that Laura and later Rose had was they thought that any dramatic adaptations would distort Laura's story and distort the truth, which is ironic because Laura in the books was already distorting the story of her life.
I mean, that's so interesting, right?
But they
Because she
were
didn't-
very uneasy about handing it over to someone and having them take it in a different direction. I think there were little bits and pieces of the series that the real Laura
Sure.
would have genuinely enjoyed.
Right.
I think that Melissa Gilbert's performance as Laura is very true to Laura Ingalls in the books.
Yeah.
I think Laura Ingalls Wilder would have liked little touches like the China shepherdess that stands on the mantle in the Ingalls house. So there were little things peppered here and there that I think Laura would have given a big thumbs up to. But generally speaking, this was not a woman who, I think would have binge watched anything.
They
just
didn't have a
like it.
TV. They didn't like
They didn't have
TV
a
and
TV.
movies. Essentially, they didn't really like that whole genre of entertainment. And she really did hate the movie. Rose took her to a big hit Chaplin film. It was the whole Pacific Exposition thing, and it was a big deal, like a
It was when
World's Fair deal.
And she visited a Hollywood studio with Rose in the 20s.
Oh, really?
And was not, it was just like, and then we went to the movie studio. There was no,
Not
she was not
impressed.
impressed by it. She was not interested
She
in it.
would not have
it was
liked
just,
that.
You
I think,
just can't please all the people all the time.
Yeah, so
That's
it wouldn't
right.
be personal. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
I love television, the new invention of television. I love the movies, that she wrote some article in the 40s or 50s, God, TV's great.
Right.
No, she hated all of it to begin with. So, yeah, she would have not liked that.
She didn't say it wasn't a big part of her life.
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that it was not a big part of her life, combined with she was afraid the stories would be distorted,
Yeah.
doesn't bode well for her opinions
Yeah.
on the series.
I
Rose,
think
on the
I think
other
it's
hand-
time. I think it's time to get out of this segment. This just becomes like
Okay,
yeah.
wait. If she'd seen the episode Bunny and saw Nellie push down the hill, would she have said, "Why didn't I think of that"?
No.
Yeah, she probably would. And Allison, I think she probably would have been like,
tried
wow,
that.
Nellie was mean. She wasn't this mean.
So yeah, that she might have liked that part. We don't know, but yeah.
On that note, we'll be right back. So we're gonna. So Pamela, you and Chris are going to be at Big Sky Ranch in March, and we just can't reinforce that
Can't wait.
enough. We want to be talking about the Little House on the Prairie 50th Anniversary Cast Reunion Festival. The two of you are going to be there. We're so excited that the two of you are going to be there.
Wait, you're excited. Wait, you should.
Remember when we were talking about the barf bag earlier? Like, I'm gonna need an Albert Ingalls barf bag.
So
We just keep saying to each other, like, we're going to run down the hill with airplane arms together. We're going to run down the hill with airplane arms together.
it's going to be, if all comes together the way it appears to be coming together, it's going to be the largest gathering of cast and crew that we've seen in 30 years.
Amazing.
There are people coming from 4 continents so far to attend this event. I just think it's going to be. I think it's going to be an extraordinary love fest for Little House, and the two of you are going to be an important part of sort of connecting. Being that mind and spirit of the audience, drawing out the stories and the experiences that cast and crew have had being a part of this. I just think people are going to love connecting with the two of you.
Oh, that's so generous and lovely, Dean. Thank you. It's an honor. It truly is.
It is truly an honor.
It's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
And I know there will be panels and presentations.
Yeah, right.
Allison, do you have a panel or a presentation you're going to talk
probably. I guess.
Oh no, I can
What am I
guarantee you.
You think?
I can guarantee you that you do. In fact, Allison's going to be on, just so for people listening, so they know, Allison will be on stage all 3 days. Melissa Gilbert will be on stage all 3 days for a panel. Karen Grassley will be on stage all 3 days to talk about things related to Little House. And then others of us will be filling in around that. Everyone who wants to be on stage will get on stage and have an opportunity to interact. But Allison, Melissa, and Karen absolutely are going to be on stage all 3 days.
All right, quick announcement. There's a thing I'm going to do.
Okay,
I
good.
just
What?
when it'll sort of at the event at some point there will be a reading of previously unpublished, unread letters that Melissa Gilbert and I wrote to each other when we used to pass notes. I found them. I found the terrible notes she used to pass to me, and I told her, I said, I'm going to read these in public.
Oh,
She's like,
that's
stop.
awesome.
Now, were these like written in school, in class, or on set,
Or at her house, or
pass
she
under
would
the
bring
table?
or I passed at the table, or she would bring them to me. We amused ourselves by writing
I
odd
can
things.
only imagine how snarky that could be.
Oh, these are really weird. Oh yeah, I have
If
stuff.
that doesn't sell tickets, I don't know what else.
Yes.
Forget about Little House.
And I warned her. I
ma'am.
said, I just found a whole drawer of stuff, and I'm going to read this. And she's like, oh.
Now you have to remember, Melissa's trying to appeal. I mean, Melissa's gone through this amazing transformation in the last decade or so. And with Modern Prairie, that's a big part of her life now, which is really a lifestyle brand for women and women talking to other women about how women age and continue to evolve in the world. She's found this incredible mission that she's on, and I think I know that Modern Prairie is excited to be there because she knows she's talking to her audience.
Hello,
Yeah, for people.
this is my market. Hello, right here, target audience. Boom.
Yeah.
So I've been told that there will be panels. Yes, panels
Yes,
with
there will
lots
be
of cast
panels and
members, of course.
presentations, and we've got that.
Isn't there some tent where they said we need various entertainment, and they were like, Allison, could you pop into the tent when you have a free moment and just like
just
MC
do 20
talking.
just do 20 minutes.
Do a hot 10
on something. So there will be panels, there'll be presentations, there will be a tent where we'll have it'll be the Little House, the Walnut Grove Cinema, where episodes of the show will be running in repertory throughout the
my
weekend. The
gosh.
people can just stop in and sit down for a few minutes and
Popcorn?
have something. There'll be
Popcorn?
food, there'll be things to drink, there will
there
be
better be
crafts to
popcorn.
do. There will be, I think, something that we're really excited about is the recreation of these 3 full-size recreations, scale recreations of 3 interior sets. The interior of the Little House, the interior of the church school, and the interior of Olson's Mercantile. I just think when fans see that, and I know from our creative team that is putting these things together, they are going to be beautiful.
Oh yeah.
And I just think people are going to weep when they see these things.
I think we're
Just
going to
use
freak
barf
out.
bags.
I will bring.
I think Kleenex. Let's go with the Kleenex.
In my dress, and they will fall out. In the
I'm going to
church.
freak out
Cool.
when I see the Olson's Mercantile. I will freak out at that point.
So listen, we're going to have so much time to talk about that, Pam. I think we really need to go, and I know there's so much more we could talk about, but I think we really need to go right now. So
we do need to go, but before we go, I'm going
Yeah.
to say the event is being presented by the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce under an agreement with Friendly Family Productions, and you can find out more at littlehousefestival.com. That's what I had to say before we go.
And that,
Chris.
and that's really important. Chris, thank you so much for
thank
being
you
with us.
so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Chris Chayka,
And
part 2.
I will see you guys in Simi Valley. So excited. Pamela, get to work on the
The tissues,
what to
the
do when
merch
people have a
store.
meltdown at Big Sky Movie Ranch.
The barf bags and the tissues. I will look into it for the merch store. Absolutely, 1,000%.
And thanks everybody for listening and joining us on this adventure.
Thank
I mean,
you.
I guess we can't go until we say what we've got going. I mean, we've launched this. We've got Little House 50. What are we saying? Little House 50 podcast.
Yes, so we have a website. Woohoo!
Yes, it's happening. It's happening.
Podcast.com. We're also, you guys are out there on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can watch us here doing this on YouTube. And we have a merch store with really cheeky Walnut Grovey Little House Prairie living on a prairie
T-shirt.
fun stuff that just makes me giggle because it's so insider baseball. I just love it. So everyone join us, please, and join the conversation. Write to us. We want to hear from you. If you have suggestions for merch or comments or just want to generally say hi, we're open to you. We hope you like and subscribe. I never
Thanks,
thought I'd
everybody.
say that before. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Very good.
Like and subscribe.
Yes.
Okay, everybody. Gotta go.
Great.
See you next time.
We'll
Thanks
see you
all.
next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.